Well, folks, it's finally here. Kentucky Oaks and Kentucky Derby weekend. Ladies first, so let's cap the Kentucky Oaks Day card. Salutations and welcome, friends, to another episode of Capping the Card here on Trust the Profits. My name is Matthew DeSantis, and you can find me on Twitter at the handle @Failed to Menace. Well, welcome to this very special edition of Capping the Card, where we are going to go races 1 through 13 and cap every single one of the cards and of the races on the Kentucky Oaks Day card. This is very exciting. If it's your first time checking us out, make sure to press that subscribe button on YouTube to make sure to get all of our content that we have here on Trust the Profits. Like this video and then comment below with what's your best pick and best value play perhaps on the day for Kentucky Oaks. This is a very exciting day, obviously huge card, tons of graded stakes action, and a lot of fun. Now, if this is your first time watching Capping the Card, the premise is pretty simple. I go race 1 through 13 with myself and a special guest, which we'll get to in a second. I give you my top pick, my top value play in every single race. Hopefully it gives you something to think about if you're playing vertical exotics or if you're playing those horizontal sequences. Joining me today, a very special friend of mine and a very good friend of mine who is someone I really trust a lot when it comes to handicapping, and someone who you got to get his content. Chase Sessoms, the Wolf of Oaklawn, Sports Gaming Podcast Network, the Notorious OTB Pod. Always great stuff. Chase, welcome to Capping the Card. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, hello. Thanks for having me, man. It's I appreciate you finally returning the hospitality. I'm kidding. This is the second time now. So I appreciate you barely paying back the hospitality.
I appreciate it. And yes, I've been very fortunate to be a guest on your podcast several times. Might be the reigning champion of the most appearances on your pod. Not sure. Might be challenged by Sarah El Badwi, but
Josh Rodriguez creeping up too.
Okay. All right. Well, we got to watch out for that. I might need to have you on a few more times to grease the wheels. So, well, Chase, I really appreciate you coming on. And before we dive into race 1 on the card, just wanted to get your kind of overall impressions, perhaps, of this Kentucky Oaks Day card.
It's massive. It's gigantic.
Yeah.
It was weird scrolling through the PPs and seeing 19 horses entered in a race that was not the Kentucky Derby or the Kentucky Oaks. It's just they packed it to the gills, and just by hell or high water, it's going to fill. I think it's a really challenging card. I don't think there's very many places where you can really lean into, say, like a free square in horizontals or a free square in the top and verticals. If you're a contest player and you're wanting contrarian cap horse picks, I'm your guy today, most likely. But yeah, I think it might get a little bit crazy, especially with the weather coming in. It's going to be, here we are 1 year later, same threat of weather. And we're still going to talk about Secret Oath being, and we're probably going to disagree on Secret Oath again.
We probably are going to disagree on Secret Oath. And you're right. Just for the people listening out there, there is a chance of rain in the forecast for Kentucky Oaks Day, potentially coming in the afternoon. I just saw the latest radar. It looks like it might be coming in around 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday. But again, that's just kind of like looming over everything. Last year, it was a threat. Yeah. Nothing ever happened.
Just remember, they lied to us last year.
They did indeed. The only place where it's consistent is San Diego. 72 and sunny is an easy place to be a weatherman, but it is one of those things, or weather person, I should say, meteorologist. So let's dive into this. And I agree with you. It's a packed card, tons of talent, and I agree with you. I think there's really only probably 2 spots where I think there's a free square to some extent out of 13, which is not very many. And we do disagree on quite a few of these. So we're going to give people a lot of different options and a lot of different choices. But let's kick things off with the first race on the card, which is a $120,000 maiden special weight going 1 mile and 1/16 on the dirt for 3-year-olds and up, fillies and mares. Chase, I'm going to let you kick things off as the guest. Your top pick, big price for Rusty Arnold. Talk a little bit about this number 3 horse, 2 Minute Lick.
Yeah, I mean, 2 Minute Lick has nothing but trouble so far in 3 career starts. The addition of the blink should maybe lead to a couple extra links of gate speed, and that's really what I'm looking for, because this has the horse with all the characteristics of a lose the lead, pack it up, quit kind of horse, kind of the Ricky Bobby, if you're not first, you're last. I'm hoping that the addition of the blinks is going to let me kind of speculate as to where the pace might come from, because there's not really in this race based on run type. They're all maidens. So yeah, I'm going to use the addition of blinkers and speculation as to early speed talent to put me onto 2 Minute Lick at 20-1.
I like it. And you actually like another 20-1 as is your second choice, who's also getting blinkers, and Origami Girl.
Yeah, from the Voodoo Queen of New Orleans, Cherie DeVoe. Second verse, same as the first. Just leaning into my good old equipment changes that get me through maidens sometimes. So, I mean, it's pretty much the strategy there is I didn't think there was going to be any pace. So I found two horses I think could surprise everyone. And they think, why is that horse out on the front at 20-1?
Yep.
It's one of those two.
Yep. No, that makes a lot of sense. I follow you on the logic there. And it's interesting. Origami Girl's a horse I actually kind of liked a little bit last time out. I do like the addition of blinkers there at a big price for sure. My top pick in this one is Back to Gridlock, which is a Chad Brown runner with Flavian Pratt aboard. This horse coming back from a little bit of a layoff. Amazingly, Brown is 38% off the layoff in maiden special weight dirt routes, and there's actually a decent sample size to suggest that that's a pretty sustainable percentage. The horse should like the distance. The works have been very regular. Gets Pratt aboard, had Rosario the first time out. Now Pratt hops on board. I feel like this is good value at 6-1 for a barn that typically fires pretty well. Already has a couple wins at Churchill Downs this early in the meet. So 6-1, like I said, Chad Brown. Will you get 6-1 come post time? I don't know. The horse showed some tactical ability to sit relatively close to the pace, was only about 2 lengths off the lead most of the first time out. So shouldn't be too far off that pace that you mentioned, may not be particularly hot. And then I will throw one downfield a little bit myself and use the number 9 horse as well. I had that one too, which is what everybody's going to say if this horse hits. But this is a horse that really perked up last time, actually on the dirt. Did that very typical, which I know you and I both love this angle. Synth to dirt, baby. Goes from Turfway Park to Keeneland, and we saw those speed figures really perk up quite a bit. Now, granted, ran a little bit behind 2 other horses in this race, but not that far behind because there was a kind of a runaway winner that day, Curl Girl, who's a horse that's actually a pretty decent price later in the card at a pretty nice race. But that was going a mile and a 16th over the Keeneland dirt. Like I said, you saw that progression. This horse has been working out really, really well. Feels like Tim Gleishaw has a nice horse here. And so I'm going to take a shot at 15-1. Probably don't view this one as a win threat as much as a horse to really use underneath in verticals, but you're absolutely going to get a price there in race number 1. Well, let's move to race number 2, which is a $100,000 optional claimer going 6.5 furlongs on the dirt for 3-year-old fillies. And this one is another one where we disagree a little bit, obviously, but I think there's a lot of value to be had here. And what's so funny is you sent me your picks a couple hours before we recorded this, and I had already capped, and I was looking over your horses that you selected. And while we don't agree on much, almost all the horses you selected, I looked at and go, that my horse, that might have a chance. Like there's a lot of that on the card where, man, I could go 4 or 5 deep with potential win contenders. And feels like this is one of those races as well. I ultimately went with one of our mutually favorite jockeys, Raylu Gutierrez, with my top pick. Always love Raylu, especially on a horse that has a lot of early speed. Unsung Melody, 6-1 on the morning line, breaking from that post position 10. The horse has just come out of incredibly live races. Maiden effort was against Merlaza. Second time out against Punch Bowl. Sacred Wish as well in that one. These are both next out winners. Punch Bowl, obviously, you saw what that horse nearly got the job done in the grade 1 Ashland. Then comes back, finally breaks a maiden last time out at Oaklawn Park. And the horse that finished second that day, Into Love, comes back to win a maiden by 11.5 lengths next time out. And that was not just didn't drop in class, ran in a maiden special weight $110,000 race. So that just shows you the class of horse that the Unsung Melody has been running against. 6-1 on the morning line. I think I'm going to use this horse up top, but interested in hearing you talk a little bit about your top pick here, Chase Padma.
Yeah, well, I really like Top Chef.
I love Padma. I also have a crush on Padma. So I get it.
I think that Brad Cox and Godolphin and other Godolphin connections are really in for just a great weekend. And I think it kicks off here with Padma. I really like her in the spot for Bill Mott. I think there's going to be a wall of early pace here. And there's just, 2 or 3 horses that are going to be sitting right behind it that are going to have first run at it. Watching replays today, it looked like you need to be a first run kind of type unless they go just Chernobyl on the front end. I think the distance is going to hit this one right between the eyes on the cut back. And I love the bullet work followed by slow work, the ass man power move, as I like to call it. So I'm me, I'm a sucker for pocket trips on the inside. I know you personally hate pocket trips on the inside.
Not the
Which
biggest fan.
It adds to our lovable odd couple flair. I also had the 4 Fogo Island at 12-1, and it has one of my favorite dirty little pig boy angles. It's all weather descent, which you're gonna have a lot of given its turfways finishing off. But first time facing winners, won the debut, impressive fashion by passing other horses. And if they elect to take Fogo back about 5.5 lengths like they did in the last race, going to be sitting in an unpressured garden spot with plenty of pace to run into. I love the horse at 12-1.
Yeah, definitely like both of these selections. Padma is a horse I really took a long look at and definitely considered using up top. Bill Mott, 38% first time getting Lasix off the layoff. So, you got to like that with Padma. I agree that I think the shortening up is going to hit this horse right between the eyes. And then, Fogo Island made a lot of sense, I think, to me. I ultimately went right next door with a value play in this one for Rudy Brissett. You and I both joke, I don't know where Rudy Brissett wins, but he does win, but it's never when I bet on him, it seems like. But he does get Flavien Prat aboard this number 5 horse, and Prat actually stays aboard. This is a horse, it's an interesting, when you look at the morning line, sometimes you try to find not inconsistencies or not mistakes, but I'll give you this as an example. Peacock last time out finishes 3rd in a $100,000 optional claiming race at Keeneland. All right, finishes 4.5 lengths behind the horse Fava. Now, Vafa is for Cherie DeVoe is breaking from the 11 hole. We don't have her in this particular race, but she's 4-1 on the morning line. Well, here's the horse that is coming back second back from a very long layoff. That was a 6-month layoff Peacock last was coming back from. Understandable that she would get a little bit tired at the end and fatigue a little bit. Now you're second back from that long layoff. Brissett's got really good numbers there. If Vafa is 4-1, I don't really see Peacock Last being 15-1 legitimately. I think Peacock Last going to definitely outrun those odds. A horse that I think is sitting on a nice effort second time back from the bench. So I'm going to be using that one. And like I said, keeps Pratt aboard, which I think is important. I mean, clearly this horse actually ran the best speed figure of its career off the bench. So I think there's potential for some impressive run here. This horse is cross-entered in another race, so do make sure to check if this horse is scratched today. So let's move to race number 3 on the card, which is an $80,000 optional claim. We're going 1 mile. We're on the turf, or as David Aragona coined it, the churf. So we'll see if the turf is any better this year at Churchill than it was last year for 3-year-olds and up in this race. And you and I have a little bit of alignment here for the first time. Talk to me about your top pick, who I really like as a value play.
Yeah, Cowboy Justice way outrun his odds first out at Keeneland after shipping across the pond. Ran kind of a flat race in that, still managed to get 3rd, now gets Lasix for the second time, reporting as a gelding for the first time. And, just a decent, consistent work after the ball ectomy, as I like to call it. And
I also love how you go like, what did you say? Like declared gelding for the first, like he was an undeclared gelding before that somehow, or like he was keeping it on the DL, but now he's going to really declare that he's a gelding. So no, I like this horse quite a bit as well. I always like, I'm a sucker for the Europeans. I just think they're better. So
here's the angle for Cowboy Justice. Why I love it at 10-1 is I feel like the horse has been running with a little bit of cut in the ground in Ireland, and also when it shipped to the United States over good turf, which good doesn't mean the same thing over there as it does here. I think if the horse gets a little bit firmer going, which is dicey, Cowboy Justice might really like it and really take to it.
I like it very much. I agree with you completely. I think the cut in the ground, I think 10-1 on the morning line. Second off from a North American start is just an angle I typically love to play as well. We saw that actually be really successful just a couple weeks ago with Papilio in the Appalachian Stakes, second back from that North American start. So definitely like this horse at 10-1. Now you like a really big bomb for the connections that won the Kentucky Derby last year, and we all see it. So tell me what you see with this horse.
I was going to say, do we though? So the horse won last out, and it earned the right to face tougher competition. Of course, is getting very aggressive with this placement. It's a big step up, but the horse is, done when it had to make it happen. And it looks like this horse, turned a corner form-wise after an abysmal showing for a couple races in Juan Cano's barn. Mm-hmm. And I think Eric Reed's got this one back to the form that it was in when it was in Eddie Keneally's barn, 2 trainers ago. And if that's the case, this horse has plenty plenty, talent to win this race. So at that price, I mean, I see nothing but values. If I'm a tournament player, that's my cap horse right there.
Love it. So we are in agreement on the number 9 horse. My top pick is going to be right next door, the number 10 horse, Whisper Not, for Brendan Walsh. And listen, if you've watched my shows before, you know I talk about this a lot. Walsh's barn, I just feel like, is either scalding hot or ice cold, and there's very little in between. He's been pretty hot lately, and so it's one of those barns that when he's on a heater, I tend to try to jump on. And just don't even really question things sometimes, because you can get some really big prices. Everybody can remember last year he wins with New Year's Eve and Santon and 2 really big races on the turf, on the Churchill card on the Oaks and Derby Day. So, he can heat up on these types of days. Whisper Not, a horse that's second back from a very long layoff. Source that ran against some really nice company, actually out west, for George Papapadromou as well as Richard Baltas. And so this is a horse that was running against some of the better turf horses out there in the country, like Lieutenant Dan and Emirati and a few others. And so, has run against good competition, came back last time, a little bit of a leg stretcher at Gulfstream Park, finished 5th, but only finished 5th by about less than 2 lengths. I think this horse has something to say about who's going to end up winning this race. Walsh is 26%, second time back on the turf. Gets Flavien Prat aboard. The speed figures kind of check out. This horse is going to want a little bit of pace to run into, but has sat closer to the lead before in its past. So this horse has some versatility, and so I'm going to be using this one up top as my top pick.
I will say, if the rains never show up, I would just hammer early speed on the turf based off of everything that I've seen over the last week. So there's a little bit of prognostication, meteorologicalization there with that.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's what we saw last year on the turf, right? I mean, last year at Churchill, you needed to be on the lead. And I mean, as much as I love a horse like Santon, that was a little bit of a cheat code last year.
Right.
Like, that was like, he likes that turf. And that's another thing to go back and look at. I would encourage people who are handicapping this card in general, look at how these horses have done on the Churchill Downs turf before, because it's not going to change that much year to date. So definitely something to keep in mind for race 3. Well, let's move to race number 4 on the card, which is a $80,000 optional claimer going 1 mile for 3-year-olds who are 3-year-olds or up, I should say, from there, who are fillies and mares. And this is one where, we were all, it was hard for me to choose between the 3 horses that we kind of all have at the top pick, between Not So Close, Hardy Constitution, and Jump Into the Fire. I think this really comes down to how you see the pace playing out in this particular race. I could absolutely see the argument that I think you're going to make about Not So Close, because that horse probably is just the speed of the speed. My concern is maybe the 9 pressures a little bit. Maybe the 7 sits behind that pace and has, as you mentioned, kind of first run at things. And so I'm ultimately going to land on the 7 Hardy Constitution at 4-1 for Joe Sharp with Tyler Gaffleone. This is a horse that's run some nice races at Churchill Downs, 2 second places and 2 career efforts at Churchill, including 1 in an enlisted stakes race. Both of those were at a mile at this distance. And so I just think this race might set up pretty nicely for this horse. And so interested in hearing you talk about your other 2, though, because I think these 3 are kind of where you need to look at as potential winners.
Yeah, I think that Not So Close is the clear-cut speed. With Jump Into the Fire, the 9 breaking so wide, who will be the other pace presence in this race, I feel like it gives Not So Close a little bit more of an edge to, say, outduel Jump Into the Fire, but there's no real speed here. And the reason I made Jump Into the Fire my value pick is because if the 4 doesn't make it to the lead and win, the 9's going to make it to the lead and win. And if Brian Hernandez Jr. and Yoel Navas can just get together and be like, hey, let's just be cool, and we'll both finish in the exacta, I could 100% see that happening. I think it's Not So Close's race to lose, but Jump Into the Fire, if Jump Into the Fire can get up, get a nose poked out in front of Not So Close, who knows? I mean, you're not really getting much reward in terms of, elevated odds for it, but who knows? By post time, that could be higher.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm looking for a little bit of value. I'll go a little off the board here with the number 8 Music City for Whit Beckman with Julian Leparoux aboard. It's just an intriguing horse at 8-1, whose value I think is probably going to float up from 8-1. I would imagine this is a horse that's coming off a pretty extensive layoff. Last ran on November 20th. Here's the thing. this horse, I can't get around. This horse has won 2 races at Churchill Downs and has historically run pretty well at Churchill. And so really the only time the horse didn't run well at Churchill was, time it kind of got sent to the bench for a while. So I'm willing to, kind of excuse that one a little bit. The works have looked very solid. They've gone back a while. This horse should be in pretty good condition. Granted, this horse is a little bit more of a deep closer. If that pace duel doesn't really end up coming to fruition between the 4 and the 9, then perhaps he kind of is on the outside looking in, and this is a little bit more of a leg stretcher. But I think for value 8-1, like I said, I think you'll get much more than that come post time. Maybe not a bad horse to use underneath in deeper vertical exotics like trifectas.
Yeah, without a gentleman's agreement, I love Music Street at that price because without a gentleman's agreement, chaos happens with my 2 horses.
Yeah, no, and that's always the thing. These 1-turn mile races, you can get some blistering speed sometimes, and it's a little different than the 6 and 7 furlong sprints. Well, let's move to the first of the many graded stakes races on the card. Let's go to the Alley Sheba Grade 2, going 1 mile and a 16th for 4-year-olds and up. And Chase, I'm going to let you kick things off here for a horse that I feel like we just saw because, oh, wait, we did just see this horse run 2 weeks ago, but Dwayne Lucas loves to keep an active barn. So talk to me about a horse that absolutely owns Oaklawn Park in Last Samurai.
Last Samurai, I don't know. I'm leaning on Last Samurai, even though I am pretty certain I've never been on the right side of this horse, dating all the way back to its time in the West Coast. Here's the deal. West Willpower, I think, is going to lock it up with Art Collector. I don't think Art Collector is just going to let West Willpower get smaller as he runs away. I don't think West Willpower is necessarily going to try to slow up. So I think this is going to develop quite a bit, and it stands to put Last Samurai in a really good position because these other horses are just, unless it is a conveyor belt that you land on with roller skates, like I have a feeling that they're going to be a little bit pace compromised here. And with Last Samurai, I do have Milliken as a deeper closer kind of surprise value pick. Mm-hmm. But with Last Samurai, that's the best value you're going to get in this race. Like, you have to go to the third choice, or you're going to get probably a tick above even money or a tick below even money on whoever you choose. And Last Samurai, I mean, this horse has been out here grinding for a really long time. It's something to be said for millionaire horses in these kind of short fields.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I like Last Samurai a lot. He's a really honest horse. He just runs as eyeballs out at Oaklawn Park, it feels like. And he's just a good horse that always runs well and always gives a good account for himself. I am a little worried about the 2-week turnaround from the last race. It's just something I'm a little concerned about, but I'm always concerned about that with Dwayne. We're going to talk about another horse on a tight turnaround later in the card from his barn as well. And I don't disagree with you in terms of Art Collector probably challenging West Willpower a little bit more, especially with Art Collector breaking from the inside rail and having to go. I really like Art Collector a lot as a horse. I do wonder if that Pegasus really took a lot out of him. And I don't know if he's quite the same horse as he was before. The other thing is West Willpower the next Knicks Go. Because this horse came to Brad Cox and now is just like unbeatable. And right. I just, that's what I kind of am hanging my hat on, that like this horse is going to just find an extra gear because that's what Knicks Go always did as well. And I just wonder, the stark contrast isn't quite as significant as it was with Knicks Go, but right. You can't deny that this is a different horse in the Cox barn than it ever was before. Yeah. And I have a feeling that's the way it's going. This horse has been working out lights out too. So I'm using him up top, but I absolutely agree with you that from a value standpoint, Last Samurai is probably the best value in the race among the favorite, because you're not going to get any sort of value on West Willpower or Art Collector. Those two are going to get bet down. Last Samurai is going to give you something at least. And then, we both like Milliken, who is going to, he's going to come from the clouds a little bit. This is a horse I really like, who just seems to keep getting better. I love horses with ascending speed figures. Last 3 times out on buyer speed figures, 88, 92, 96. Horse is getting better and stretching out in the process. I like that combination of things. One last time out at this distance, 10-1 on the morning line. This is a nice horse to use, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and you've got Into Mischief on the top line too.
Yep.
with Milliken. I mean, that pretty much takes care of any sort of like distance concerns. Plus the fact that the horse just ran at just won at the exact same distance. Yeah, I think it's going to be up to really this being a rider's race. What is Julian Leparoux going to do here? Is he going to let the horse kind of run? Is he gonna be, putting it in the chokehold for the entire race? Having it run itself into exhaustion doing that. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll find out.
Yeah.
But I do like Milliken as a sneaky play. I mean, if you're not going to go with one of the three, you have to really reach for value.
Yeah, agreed. I took a brief look at Smile Happy and decided not. Let's move on to race number 6, the Modesty Stakes, Grade 3, going 1.1 miles on the turf for 4-year-olds and up. And this is a really fun race. Let me just say that. This is a really fun race. And I ultimately went with the top pick, who I have really fallen in love with, which is Didia, 5-1 on the morning line for Ignacio Correas IV, Vincent Chaminade up on the mount. This is a horse, I thought if this horse was going to lose, it was going to be last time out, coming off of a really long layoff, having only ever run off that Colonial turf, goes to Fairgrounds and runs on whatever that turf can be called. I don't even know a good nickname for it. Looks like we're swimming potholes on I-95 when you're riding on it. But it is, this horse goes out and wins the stakes race there. Chaminade aboard in that one as well. And so, this is a horse I just think is really, really good, coming up from Argentina and has done nothing but win here in the United States. 5-1 on the morning line, I think, provides you a good amount of value. I just think this horse is only going to get better. That was a really lengthy layoff. Went from August 16th to March 25th without running. Still came back with a 93 buyer. I think there's progression there. That's why I'm going to use this horse up top. My value play, though, is your top pick, and a horse that is also very near and dear to my heart, because at the Virginia Oaks, I was there with my mom at Colonial Downs, took my mom to the track, always great. Shout out to Hope. And it was one of the last races in the card. Sparkle Blue was 40-1.
Whew.
And I said, I kind of like this horse. And I said, I don't think this horse is going to win, but I kind of like this horse. And I leveraged a large place bet on a 40-1 horse, and Matthew was eaten at Sizzler that night. So I'm a big fan of Sparkle Blue for Graham Motion. Talk to me more about this one.
Well, I think it really kind of comes down to what Danny Girl, the one hole, is going to do here. Yeah. And I think that Danny Girl, Sweet Danny Girl, is going to go, but I also think that she's just not good enough to win this race on the front. And Sparkle Blue is going to sit right off of Sweet Danny Girl and really just have first run. It's kind of a faux rabbit. It's like, is it a rabbit if no one responds to it? Is it a tree? If a tree falls in the woods, whatever. And then my value pick, the 6, McCulloch.
Yeah,
it's the other Chad Brown, 5-2. That's still value. Other
right.
Chad Brown, can't leave it off.
Yep. I am. So it's funny. You and I both are fading Chantasara, who's the favorite in this race. Listen, she's becoming a little bit like in Italian for me. Like, I just fade Chantasara most of the time. Sometimes I'm wrong. In Italian, I'm always wrong, it seems like. But that last race, I was against her in the Hillsborough. I just don't see it. I was against her at the Pegasus as well, and she finished second that day. She's a nice mare, but I just don't think she's certainly not 2-1. And if you're going to make me choose between the two Chad Browns, I'll absolutely choose McCulloch. Brown obviously coming off a long layoff, last ran in October, but a super, super talented horse. And we should point out, gets Irad aboard too, which sometimes I think can, I don't know. I don't know if the, Flavian versus Irad, Flavian's on Chantasara, Irad's on McCulloch. I don't know. I'd rather go with the Irad horse over the Flavian horse. All things considered. So, but I think you can catch a price here in the Modesty for sure. Well, let's go to race number 7 on the card. And this one is going to take us about 2 seconds to talk about, because it is all about money's gold, I think. Grade 2 race, 8 bell stakes, 7 furlongs for 3-year-old fillies. Chase, this feels like the free square on the card.
Yeah, that's what I thought. There's no other horse can touch this, with figures by any means. Like, this horse is a good 20, 30 points above everyone else. Yeah. It's just they're gonna run this into the field. And I think I typoed. I'm sorry, I had a second pick. It was a seed 5-1, and basically this is purely an alternate if money gold scratches. That's it. That's the only reason to have that horse. It's a free square.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. Total Freed Square. I do think a seed's a nice horse at 5-1. Um, and Money's Gold. I just thought you were being silly when you sent me the picks. I'm like, oh, your first and second pick, Money's Gold. Like she might run this race and then just do another lap and just
Nope.
finish second as well.
Just terrible quality control. That's what that
No,
was.
it's okay. It's all right. Hey, I remember when Scott Shapiro came on one time, his top pick and his value play were the same horse. He's like, I'm just going all in. I'm like, great. And so,
The one that
no,
was OJ's lawyer?
uh, no, the one who wears the silly cap like me.
Oh, yeah.
No,
Okay. Yeah.
that
It
guy.
makes sense. That makes sense.
But no, I agree with you. Listen, Money's Gold might be the best female sprinter in the country, like full stop. Like, I mean, it just, no qualifications necessary for age or, like she's just that good. Just freakishly fast. If she runs anywhere like she did in the first, two of her first three races, hell, even her second race wasn't that bad. And I mean, this could be the kind of like wow moment on Oaks Day on the undercard where the nation gets introduced to a really, really special sprinter. And those are always, I think, special moments when a horse introduces itself to the country. From a value play, listen, I'll take a huge bomb here with a horse like Grand Love at 15-1 for Steve Asmussen, gun runner. This is a horse that is cutting back, and I think this is probably the right thing. This is a horse that has a lot of early speed, but always seems to fade late. Now you're cutting back to 7 furlongs, and part of the reason I like Grand Love is this horse is just run against the best fillies in this crop, fillies that we are going to be talking about later in the card, like Wet Pate, like Taxed, and some of these other horses, Wonder Wheel, etc., has run against the best, and now is cutting back 15-1. I'll use that horse because that horse has speed, may not have 7 furlong sprinter speed, but is not going to be too far off, and is going to have plenty of stamina. So if horses get really tired trying to chase Money's Gold, I think Grand Love can kind of scoop up and hit some money in the exacta there. One of the things I always like to do is usually go with a short price like Money's Gold and a huge bomb in a straight exacta or something like that, or trifecta to try to make a little bit of money there.
You got your single covered. Just go. Now you can just put the long shot. Win bet on the long shot, and you're
exactly
boom. Guaranteed a fun outcome.
Yeah, exactly. It is guaranteed a fun outcome for sure. Now we're gonna move on to race number 8, and this is one where I actually think there's a free square, but you disagree. And so we're going to go to the Unbridled Sydney Stakes, 5.5 furlongs on the turf for 3-year-old and up filly and mares. And I'm going to go with the morning line favorite Caravelle at 4-5 on the morning line for Brad Cox and Tyler Gaffleone. Listen, I tried to beat this horse with Bad Beat Brian, and I got a bad beat last time. That was just a horrible, horrible race to be on the other side of. She's gone out and beaten the boys now the last 2 times out. When she faces her girls, she dominates typically. And, I know she might face a little bit more front end pressure than she normally does. I just feel like this is a massive class drop for her from last time out. I think it's going to be, you mentioned earlier, big day for Brad Cox and some of those connections. I just think Caravelle is kind of an automatic free square in race 8. But tell me why I'm wrong with a horse like Au revoir, who I absolutely loved last time out and just didn't quite get the job done.
I'm so glad you said it before me, because not only was I going to pronounce it Ouvre, I was going to pronounce it Ouvre with gusto. This horse just had a hell of a winter and early spring at the fairgrounds.
Yep.
And it ships to Keeneland for the Giants Causeway, has some issue with the gate nerves, shakes off the nerves, shake off the nerves, add the fact that we're second off the layoff now. And I think that this is a good spot, just a really good tactical spot for Chris Block and Loverboy, Jareth Loveberry at 5-1. Base Storm is simple. It's a 5.5 furlong race. The gate pops, Base Storm has to run straight and fast. And that's in Base Storm's skill set.
That is.
But yeah, I think that Caravelle has, if you go back into Caravelle's history, it's rare that the horse would win back-to-back races. It would be win, off form, win, off form, win, off form. And now we've won 3 straight. I love betting against all streaks. I love betting on fun things not to happen. And I'm going to bet that the fun thing doesn't happen here and we beat Caravelle.
I hear you on that, and I'm going to hope that it comes up Caravelle one more time, at least for this one. My value play in this one is the number 9, Little Jewel, who is also in that Giants Causeway and also had a little bit of trouble coming out of the gate, and it was bumped around a little bit. This is a horse that will need a little bit of pace to run into, but shouldn't mind the distance at all. Can make up ground. Was making up ground in that Giants Causeway as well, and was it was making up ground on the leader coming for home. 8-1 on the morning line for Carlo Vaccarezza with Castellano aboard, and I just think this horse might get the right trip, especially if there's a little bit of pace pressure. Obviously we know Caravel's going to go up there. If Baystorm's going to go up there as well, there's a few other horses that are going to challenge. I know you and I both can be suckers sometimes betting on closers in sprint races, but I do think Little Jewel, going 5.5, 8-1 on the morning line. We'll see what you end up getting, but I think this horse might add a little bit of value underneath, certainly in this particular race. Well, let's move to race number 9 on the card, which is the La Troienne, and going a mile and a 16th, grade 1 race for 4-year-old nut fillies and mares, the Distaff division, the best division in all of racing, in my opinion. I know you probably agree with that, Chase. And we get to see one of the true superstars in this division run in Secret Oath, who is your top pick. Talk to me about this Dwayne Lucas filly, who is coming back on a relatively short turnaround.
With Secret Oath in this race, it's like you watch like the NBA All-Star Celebrity Game, and then you have it was like Tom Hanks playing with like a couple of like social media influencers. That's how I feel about Secret Oath and Secret Oath's chances. Because if I were going to write a script for Secret Oath in terms of how this race, shapes up, it wouldn't even been this good. Like I would have stopped because I have terrible creativity. So 3-1. Yeah, I love it. The pattern going back to last year's Kentucky Oaks win and La Troienne effort this year, they look exactly the same. So I think this horse is absolutely cranked. There's no reason to think that you're not going to see pretty much an exact replay of the Kentucky Oaks last year. And then Soul of an Angel.
You're taking a bomb here. This is, 50-1. Pat yourself on the back, because this one is just pulling it from the clouds.
I mean, if the pace has Meltdown written all over it, why am I not going to take the 51 horse that runs the exact same kind of race as Secret Oath? Like, I would let you kick my ass. I would drive town to town and let you kick my ass for not doing that.
It's a big price. You're right. If there's a pace breakdown, this horse should capitalize on it for sure. I am going with the Society as my top pick. At 4-1 for Steve Asmussen with Jose Ortiz aboard. I understand what you're talking about with if there is a pace battle that really sets up. Depends on what Search Results wants to do. We all remember when Search Results went nuclear with Latruska at the Ogden Phipps last year. We'll see. Society, and I'm a little bit of a sucker for this sometimes with horses that I've seen win in person before. Society's effort at the Cotillion was one of the best efforts I've ever seen a horse run in person. That was just that was textbook, like how you use speed in a dirt route race, of just get this horse out and just make everybody else try to catch you, because she's got the speed and she is so much faster than some of these other horses, I think. And the kicker is, I think she wants to do 2 turns. I think that's her natural tendency to do 2 turns, because her other great effort was at Charlestown. And people might say that, Matthew, that was 7 furlongs. Aha, the bull ring, it's a 7-turn race at 2 furlongs. So it is, it's one of those where I think this horse, it doesn't mind the distance. If Jose Ortiz is aggressive, I think gives him the right type of ride. I actually kind of like that this horse went out and ran in the Madison first time out, more as like a leg stretcher, quite frankly. Finished 3rd in that race to Goodnight Olive and Mary Quite Contrary. I think this horse is sitting on a much improved effort here. I'm going to try to beat Secret Oath, who is coming back on a very quick turnaround. Last ran on April 15th, now coming back running on May 5th. And Dwayne likes to keep them fresh. We all know that. But we'll see how that one ends up playing out. As a value play, I'm also going to throw one downfield a little bit with Desert Dawn, 20-1. Phil D'Amato had a really nice Keeneland meet. And I think that was kind of an underrated storyline that was in there. He didn't have a ton of entries at Keeneland, but he won a lot of races there. And this is a horse second back from a really long layoff as well. Has run against very, very good competition out on the West Coast, making that kind of debut on the East Coast. I typically don't like the West Coast to East Coast angle. Certainly for turf horses, on dirt, it's a little bit different. It's a horse that tends to just turn in a really honest effort, and we should be remiss if we don't mention this horse that finished 3rd in the Kentucky Oaks last year. And so has run well over the Churchill Downs surface. I just think this horse at 20-1 might have a little bit of something to say of who is going to end up on the board. And if there is that pace meltdown, Desert Dawn is going to come running at the end. So I'm going to use this horse underneath in some verticals in the La Troienne.
I mean, using your horses like horizontally, I approve of what you're doing because you're using the horse as an A essentially that doesn't need a setup. That's going to go out and make its own race, as opposed to Desert Dawn, Soul, and Angel, Secret Oath, who are all very setup dependent.
Yeah. And yeah, we'll see. I mean, the only sad part is Claire is not here, because then it would just be a jam, if she were here. But let's move on to race number 10 on the card, which is the Edgewood Stakes. And this is another, I just think, banger of a race. And this is exciting. It's a grade 2 race going 1 mile and a 16th on the turf for 3-year-old fillies. Man, this 3-year-old filly turf division is nice. I like this division a lot. What are your thoughts? I mean, because I'm just interested in kind of, you could talk a little bit about Flashy Gem, but I'm interested in your thoughts in general on this one.
Well, I think a lot of people are going to be really disappointed in me as a handicapper because this race made my head hurt. And so I decided to use the other Cox and the other Chad Brown. One of them is going to win. It's going to happen. That's just how races work these days. But yeah, Flashy Jim, basically what happens when the rabbit keeps going? We've seen that happen. We've seen that happen before. And I do like Flashy Jim to maybe just get out, control this pace. There's a whole lot going on with, how many entries he has in there, like who's going to go and pressure. Is he going to go super fast? Is he going to go super slow? What's going to go on? So yeah, I love it. And then, Liguria 6-1. It's the long odds Chad. Just duh.
Mm-hmm. I hear you. This is a race that features Cairo Consort, a horse that I think we all really remember. Obviously, that Swedish chant where she blew the break and then just made that furious run late to win. It also features a horse I absolutely loved last time out and bet the house on, Papilio, who can't run in a straight line, but sweet Jesus, that horse is fast. And might just be able to get the job done as well, but it's 7-2 now instead of 6-1 like she was last time. Ultimately, I'm going to go with one of the other Chads. I'm going to go with preliminary 5-1 on the morning line. Yep. Here's an interesting thing about this one. Making the step up, obviously, from maiden special weight to graded stakes competition, always a very big jump, is going to want a little bit of pace to run into. Absolutely. Should say this horse broke from the far outside post in debut, still was able to win going a mile at Gulfstream Park. Irad stays aboard. Fascinating development. Her full sister actually just won an allowance race on Tuesday at Churchill Downs as well. And so I thought that was just interesting. It doesn't necessarily mean anything about the outcome of this race, but it's just interesting that pedigree, the full sister just ran earlier in the week at Churchill on the turf and got a win in a high-level allowance race. So I'm going to use this preliminary as my top pick. I'm going to use Heavenly Sunday, another Brad Cox horse with Florent Giroux aboard as my value play. This horse just feels like she just runs really honest. She keeps getting a little bit better every single time out from a speed figure standpoint. 2 wins, 2 third places, never finished off the board. Finished behind Papilio and Cairo Consort last time out in the Appalachian. And finished third to Papilio and Alphabella the time before that. What I like about Heavenly Sunday is she can sit a lot of different types of trips. She's versatile. She can be on the lead. She can be sitting mid-pack. She can be a little bit further back. So I think Florent has a few different options here in terms of how he wants to attack this one. 8-1 on the morning line. I'm going to use this horse underneath, maybe even use this horse over a small win bet. But definitely took a long look at the Flashy Gem as well. Makes a ton of sense. This does feel like a race where the other might just get the job done.
It's a good thing that Naipaul Chatterpaul does not have a horse entered in this race, because with each covering, 2 Cox or two Chad Browns, it's an ideal situation for a Naipaul Chatterpauling.
It really is. It really, really is. Well, let's move to the crowning race of the day, the Kentucky Oaks, grade 1, 1.1 miles for 3-year-old fillies. This is a fascinating race. It's a fascinating Oaks field. I feel like we don't have the pizzazz that we had last year with Kathleen O and Echo Zulu and Secret Oath and Nest and these big names that we had been following who had just been dominating their respective circuits. We come into this one, a lot of these horses have been running the same speed figures. A lot of these horses have been kind of taking turns beating each other in some cases. Interested in where you ended up going in this one, Chase.
Man, put on your thinking cap. Break out your topographic maps. I got Flying Connection at 15-1. Drops in after winning the Sunland Oaks in easy fashion. Here's the angle. He's been doing it at high elevation. He did it without breathing, pretty much. Now he drops down. He gets all of the oxygen. Yeah, this horse is going to run lights out, and it's the early speed in this race. Give me Flying Connection to just take him wire to wire here. I mean, why not? It's the horse that's making its own race. It's going to be out on the front. I'm not, bargaining for a setup. I mean, it's a bona fide It's a bona fide at this point win, play, show bet, barring what comes in the pools. And when it looks as easy as maybe wet paint, let me have something that gives me the little bumps in my chest in this race, like a 15-1 Flying Connection for Todd Fincher.
Listen, I like Todd Fincher a lot. I lived in El Paso, Texas. I can tell you that when I came to the East, I did certainly breathe a lot better.
Yeah. You were dunking on regulation goals,
Yeah, I mean, I was all over those like regulation, if we want to call it like elementary school hoops regulation. But I was just jamming it there. Listen, I'm going to use Wet Paint as my top pick. This is the filly that has really the only filly who's done the job the whole circuit and the whole prep season. And she's answered the bell every single time. She's won on a wet track. So if there is moisture in the track, I know she can handle that. No problem at all. She comes from the back, which is always a dicey proposition. But here's the thing. I think Flying Connection, I think Darth Vader, I think Botanical are all going to go pretty fast early. I think it's going to be a pretty hot pace. I think it sets up beautifully for a horse like Wet Paint to come running for home. She's faced bigger fields and navigated through traffic that way. Pratt seems to have a good sense of what she needs to do to win. I'm going to use her as my top pick. But that said, I do think there's good value in this race. I'm going to use the number 14 horse, Pretty Mischievous, as my value play in this race, 10-1 on the morning line. And this horse really just doesn't do anything wrong, to be honest. I mean, this horse finished third in the Goldenrod and finished second last time out, where I do feel like she didn't even see Southlawn until Southlawn went right by her. And she was dueling with the Alley's look and got the better of the Alley's look. And then all of a sudden, Raylu and Southlawn were coming flying down the middle of the track. And I just feel like she didn't see this. The other reason I like Pretty Mischievous is depending on how the track is playing, she should be sitting just off of that speed. So I think those three horses I mentioned, Darth Vader, Botanical, and Flying Connection are going to be forward. I think Pretty Mischievous sits probably fourth or fifth right there. And then we'll get first crack at it. And if it's a speed favoring track, I definitely don't want somebody coming from too far back. 10-1 for Brendan Walsh, who I mentioned. Barn can be pretty hot right now. Tyler Gaffley on board. That's where I'm going to be going in the Kentucky Oaks. Chase, I don't know if you wanted to add anything else about Wet Paint, who was your second choice.
I'm actually going to, Wet Paint is just seems like a push button horse. It's like, it can come back from 10 back and come from 2 back and come from 5 back. I mean, it's the best horse in this race, but the fact that it always comes from the back, that's why you can, that's going to be an unfortunate audio clip. That's why I think that you can maybe try to take the stab at Flying Connection. I do think Wet Paint is the best horse in the race. Mal Bamford of the MLB gambling podcast on SGPN. He taught me when you have this many Go Dolphin, because that's my Dolphin horses, it's always the one in the white cap. It's always the one in the white cap.
That is true. Mal does always say that. And he's right a lot of the time too in that.
It's true.
It's absolutely right. The white cap Godolphin is the way to go. Well, that's might be the end of the graded stakes, but that's not the end of the card. We still got 2 more races just in case you're a degenerate. And I personally love sticking around for races 12 and 13. Nothing made me happier that after Flightline won, I actually stuck around and watched Wakanaka win a turf race at the Breeders' Cup with about me and 12 other people at Keeneland. And so that was a pretty great beat. Let them beat the traffic. I'll get out later.
Right.
But let's move on to race number 12. $100,000 optional claimer going 1 mile and a 16th on the dirt for 3-year-old fillies. And this is one where this is kind of like the junior varsity Kentucky Oaks race in a lot of ways. A lot of these horses were on the Oaks trail, but just didn't get there. I am going to use the favorite in this race, Guns and Graces, who's a horse that just, wasn't able to get the job done against better competition, against Defining Purpose and Punch Bowl and Julia Shining. But is a horse that's going to come from the back, but doesn't need to come from the back, has sat closer, and one going that way too. Getting Lasix for the first time, 27% win rate for Brown, getting those first time Lasix. Seems like a good horse for Joel Rosario. Is going to be sitting from the back. Rosario has been timing those rides, it seems like, beautifully right now. Faced, like I said, very, very good horses, and I think is just a little bit of a better horse than some of these other ones, like the pedigree in this. Going to use this one as my top choice. But talk to me a little bit about Boss Lady Bailey, who I did take a really good look at for John Ortiz and Ray Luke.
So if you took a good look at it, you agree that's a horse that just needs a dry track, right?
Yeah. Yep.
You have this AB pattern with sloppy races and inserted into the B. So now if we get another fast track, who's to say that the horse can't pair up another kind of A performance? And if the horse does that, it's plenty fast to win. And, Oaklawn Park really kind of muddied up her form with off-track starts. So I think that, I'm getting 8-1. I would dare to say I could even get as high as maybe 15-1 here in this race, because I do think it's going to be overlooked and people are going to kind of key into that pattern. And the tough legacy with Norm and Luis Saez, it's just going to save all the ground. You have a horse on the rail with a Curl Girl who's just going to go. Yeah, it's just going to tuck over. It's going to be coming late, and there should be a stretched out, tired field to just pick up and put down later. But this is one of those ones that I do feel really good. Taking a shot at. I know it's chalky for me at 8-1 today, but I do like Boss Lady Bailey quite a bit.
It's funny. Tough Legacy was almost my top choice. And the only reason I didn't give her as a value play is because I went with Guns and Graces as my top, but Tough Legacy, I think a really, really good horse. And this is one that if I'm playing horizontally, I'm absolutely including this horse on my tickets for sure. And the angle that you used with Boss Lady Bailey is the exact angle that would have led people to Defining Purpose, and something that I mentioned in the preview for the Ashland. I said this horse finally gets off a slop track and gets on a dry surface, and look what happens. And so that angle of just get a horse on a decent track off the monsoons that have been happening in your neck of the woods in Arkansas might actually just be beneficial for these horses. My value in playing this one is Forever Dixie, the number 7 horse. Second back from a really long layoff. This horse actually ran halfway decent. This horse was actually in the Grey Cup of the Grade 3 up at Woodbine back in November, running against the boys, actually. So there's fair amount of expectations around this horse at one point. And for Mark Cassie, brings this horse back down, ran in Keeneland, ran, I thought, a pretty nice third considering how long the layoff was of about 5 months. And now comes back, second back from the layoff, has gotten a couple of works in since that last race, and a couple of nice works too, some 4 furlong works, one of them in sloppy conditions. But this is a horse that, like I said, I think is a nice horse to potentially run underneath here, can sit a few different types of trips, has flash speed or tactical speed to sit somewhat close, but can also close from the back as she did in her maiden. So just depends on what type of trip she'll end up getting there. But I think there's a little bit of a shot there with Forever Dixie at 6-1.
With Forever Dixie, what you have going for it that I actually, really like quite a bit is I really like betting back from Keeneland these PS kind of horses, if you want to put a run style on it, just because it feels like the track always plays against him. You have a horse that ran into the teeth of a bias last out with Forever Dixie. So I think that's a really sharp pick. It's a good catch.
Yep. Well, let's move to the bailout race, and race number Lucky 13, $120,000 maiden special weight. This is where we started. This is where we're going to end on a $120,000 maiden special weight, 7 furlongs for 3-year-olds and up. And this one, it feels completely wide open. The all button might not be able to get pressed enough in this one. But Chase, talk me through your top pick and value play in this one.
Yeah, I've had Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers stuck in my head.
It's so funny. Same.
Which then blends into Ghetto Superstar.
Yep,
eventually.
exactly. Yep.
I'm a pretty simple man when it comes to maiden races. I like my horses ballless, my eyes covered. My veins injected with legal therapeutics. I'm going with Island in the Stream, adding the blinks for the second career start. Yeah, and I think this one might have gotten a little too close to our early, hot pace early. Kind of got sucked in, and who knows with the blinks, maybe it adds a little bit of a chill here. And instead of getting sucked into that pace, the horse just kind of runs its own race and runs him down, late. And then Coppa Girl, just a little room for the new shooter here. I really think that Brad Cox is going to have a tremendous weekend.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think you could do worse than just, hanging your hat on a hot Cox in the finale.
I always love it. You're always a wordsmith with this stuff, Chase. Always.
Sorry.
No.
That's my bad.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with the Asmussen horse with Rosario Board, number 11, Twin Mischief, second back from a really long layoff. And this is 5-1 on the morning line, is going to come from the back for sure, but doesn't have to be not a deep closer necessarily. I mean, I think if you look at that first race, actually was sitting like 3 lengths off, 5 lengths off, and then eventually just kind of, got tired. But the maiden effort was against Chocolate Gelato, Take Charge Brianna. I mean, these are really good horses that she was running against first time out. In $105,000 maiden special weight at Saratoga, then goes from August 14th to March 25th. So on the bench for a really long time, comes back, nearly gets the win at the fairgrounds, just second by a neck, makes a furious charge late. Lasix for the second time, 5-1 on the morning line. You get that outside post position. We'll be able to kind of determine where she slots in. Rosario, as I mentioned, it seems like he's gotten his timing back down. Asmussen 28%, second back from long layoffs and maiden special weights. I think there's going to be another progression here from a speed figure standpoint, so I'll use Twin Mischief up top. And then for my value play, I'll use No Guilt for D. Wayne Lucas, just to show you I'm not hating on D. Wayne the whole card. I'll use his horse here in the final 10-1 on the morning line with Irad Ortiz Jr. aboard. This horse just seems really honest, 4 for 7 in the money, despite being a maiden. Can also handle the slop, which is something that I think might be important as the reins potentially start coming in. And the race last time out has already yielded a next out winner. I think, you get Irad at 10-1 on the board. Hard to ignore that price. So that's where I'm going to go in the bail out race.
An ice cold octogenarian who knows how to rock a bubble goose. That's what you got with D. Wayne Lucas.
That's all I need. I need.
I hope we're both right the times that we have Coach, because Coach will have a fantastic day. Like I love it when octogenarians beat the whippersnappers.
Oh, I do too. Nothing makes me happier. So Chase, I didn't let you know this, so I'm going to put you on the spot because I know you already capped the race.
Mm-hmm.
Kentucky Derby, where are you going?
Right now it feels like a 3-way shake between Verifying Kingsbarn and Dermisotogake. My gut says Dermisotogake. A little bit is arrogance and wanting to have the first Japanese winner.
Yeah.
But I think that Kingsbarn was the winner of the post draw. No one's really talking about it.
Yep.
I see the Time Form US pace projection, and with that draw, I actually put him maybe putting Dermisotogake a little bit further out, getting to the rail on the lead. Same thing could happen with Verifying as well. So people are saying it's a hot pace. People are saying it's not a hot pace. I think it's one of those weird things that just with the way that we gauge things, it tripped the algorithm and it made it hot, and it's really not going to be.
Yeah.
So I like Dermisotogake. I wish I hadn't drawn the 17, but if you look at who's won won the Derby the last 10 years, everything's coming from those outside posts. It's only a matter of time.
Yeah. Listen, you're not going to get any arguments from me for Dermisotogake. Absolutely love that horse. It's funny. I just wrote a column for Odds Checkers US that Kingsbarns was like all of a sudden just keeps moving up my rankings. Like every time I reanalyze that race, I'm just like, Kingsbarns, like that horse makes a lot of sense there.
Do you want a tinfoil hat, 8chan kind of conspiracy theory on it?
Give it to me.
King Charles coronation is on Saturday.
Oh, fantastic. I mean, just absolutely fantastic.
If he comes out wearing the Michael Jackson jacket silks, like the military looking one, winner.
Just the best. This is why I have you on, Chase. All right. Well, that'll do it for this episode of Capping the Card. Chase, let the people know where they can find you and all of your content.
You can always find me being abrasive on Twitter @OFOaklawn. Hey, you can now find me being unattractive on Instagram @WolfOfOaklawn. You can follow my podcast @the_notorious_OTB on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. We've got content coming out all week. We've already had our post-reaction draw. I've got Ryan Dickey coming tomorrow morning to make some picks. And I think I'm probably going to do a Friday episode, a bonus episode.
Nice.
It's going to be talking about making adjustments based off of what we saw on Friday onto the Saturday card, so that you've got the best information if you listen to the Notorious OTB. Plus, got a giveaway contest going if you review the show.
Yep, absolutely. Make sure to check Chase's content out. It is the best out there, in my opinion. Listen, folks, Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm going to wish you the best of luck on Kentucky Oaks Day. We're going to be back and we're going to do this again tomorrow with our good friend Sarah L. Bodway, and we're going to cap the entire Kentucky Derby Day card, and that's going to be a lot of fun as well. Until next time, friends, my name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and very profitable Oaks Day at the races and reminding you that it is now post time.